month, I wanted to really harp on the romance and what true love was. And I'm going to start with, again, I had done some research um, for this episode, and I had read some essays, and I'm going to quote from this essay. But first, I do want to read the quote that I'm kind of basing this on. It's like at the very end of the film. It's Rick, and he's talking to Ilsa, and he says, "If that plane leaves the ground and you're not with him, you'll regret it. Maybe not today or tomorrow, but soon and for the rest of your life." It's a very short little line, but it's just packed with so much and kind of what this whole story is about. And so the essay that I'm going to quote from, I pulled a couple quotes from it. It's from the Library of Congress blogs. They were talking about, introducing Casablanca into the film archives. And this essay was written by Jay Carr, like in commemoration of it. And I started reading this essay, and I was kind of laughing because this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's kind of like this film is being introduced into the film archives, like this movie is being preserved as an American classic, and he's kind of bashing it. So let me read. He says, "It's still the same old story, maybe more so. Casablanca was never a great film, never a profound film. It's merely the most beloved movie of all time." And then you skip a little forward. "Apart from the fact that Paul Henreid's Victor Laszlo is such a saint that he's irritating, you don't want to see Bergman's Ilsa Lund go off with him. She's obviously strong and strong-willed, that you're disappointed to just see her knuckle under and go off and do what she's supposed to do. Her appeal is precisely that she'll let her feelings lead her to what she's not supposed to do. You feel passion is being subordinated to an abstraction. You want her to second guess Rick and not go." And that's Jay Carr, everybody. And I just want to say I wholeheartedly disagree with his entire analysis of this film. And to be honest, he doesn't get it. He wholly misunderstands the story and what it's about. This is not a modern story. This is not a movie about romantic love. It's about sacrificial love, or love within the right boundaries. And we see this so much again in these modern modern stories. We like to blur boundaries. We like to say that anything goes, but the Bible makes clear lines. It makes clear distinctions. Sex is a good thing. God never says it isn't. Sex outside of marriage is a bad thing. So there's a line that you can't cross. Like wealth is not necessarily in itself a bad thing. Trusting in your wealth over God's sovereignty is bad. So all these things like ambition and love and fear, they can all be good or bad depending on the boundaries that God has set and how you're viewing them through those lenses. And what this Jake Carr guy doesn't understand is that this story is actually within the right boundaries of what love can and can't be. So for fear of being cliche, because I know we talked about it during our In the Lobby episode 2, I'm going with the First Corinthians 13 passage, the love passage. And I'm sure people are tired of hearing this one. I'm a wedding photographer. I've heard this passage more times than you will ever hear in your entire life, I assure you. Honestly, sometimes I think it's become meaningless to me, which is
Mm.
really sad because, guys, this is a beautiful passage. It shouldn't matter how many times you've heard it. This is what God is saying that love is and isn't. Because it clearly defined lines. And love can't be hurried because love is patient. It can't be mean because it's kind. It's generous. It doesn't boast. It's not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Watching this movie, I just thought Rick and Laszlo demonstrate all of these virtues. In this movie, we see that everybody goes to Rick's. People like Rick, which is funny because he's such a cynical guy and everyone tells him so. Everyone's like, "You're such a cynical guy, Rick." But the thing is, I think they see this cynical shell, but they sense the real man that's underneath, and they're drawn to that. And you can be that as a Christian. Like people are drawn to the light that you give, don't hide your light under a bushel. You got to be the light. And again, his I stick my neck out for no one is simply not true. It's only a defense because throughout this whole movie, he regularly sticks out his neck for those in needs. He proves it time and time and again. And even Renault notices that, again, he has a suspicion that he's a sentimentalist at heart. He's not neutral. He knows that there's good and bad, and he knows what can and can't be allowed. He gives up his own chance to escape with her and live that, happy, sappy, romantic life, and get rid of her husband in the process. Like he would just have win-win-win, by running off with her. But instead, he gives up his place to the man who has the proper place in her relationship. And the thing is that Rick had every opportunity to do the wrong thing, as Ilsa said, to think for the both of them, um, and decide that his needs trumped Laszlo. But he knew deep down it was wrong, and that he couldn't let Ilsa make that choice. And that honestly is deeply romantic to me, to not let somebody do that to themselves, to not let someone make that wrong choice. To sacrifice basically your fleshly needs and recognize that that isn't your place and you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't be there. And I also think one of the interesting things that happens in this movie is that he even confesses his sins basically to Laszlo, just to be completely clear that he will never come between them again. So not only does Ilsa know, but Laszlo does as well. There's nothing left open ended. And I was just thinking, if this movie came out today, it wouldn't end like that. People would hate that, and they do apparently. Apparently, Jake Carr doesn't like it, and I can't help but feel they would slip like or insert like a knowing look between Rick and Ilsa before leave. Like maybe she looks back, and they have this moment, or maybe Rick slips a piece of paper into her pocket, or instead of that iconic last line, instead maybe something like "I'll find her someday somehow." And leave us with that hope of them getting together, which is what he was getting at in the essay. Like he wanted them together, but he didn't understand that that was the wrong thing to want. And but instead, these writers, instead of giving us that hope basically of like Rick and Ilsa getting together, they leave us on the runway as Ilsa and her husband fly away, stuck with Rick, knowing that we've done the right thing and that we can now finally move on with our lives basically, because Rick has been stuck in this place again. Like we were talking about earlier, this whole story takes place basically in one setting. And but even at the end of the movie, even though you're still there, that now we can move on. We were stuck for a reason. We were learning a lesson, and now both Ilsa and Rick can move on from what happened. And I just think it's genius writing, and it's morally satisfying, which is what we don't get nowadays a whole lot with these kinds of movies, especially, is like a morally satisfying ending. We could never root for their love story, honestly, because it's wrong. And I honestly think they left the details of the relationship vague kind of for that reason. That kind of makes it easier to give up that romance at the end because it was never meant to be. And they even give Ilsa a few moments of chemistry with Laszlo too, that I love. Just to kind of ensure that we're not entirely rooting for Rick the whole time. Like, that again, that Jay Carr was saying that he's such a saint that it's irritating, and I'm like, but he's not. He's not. He's a real guy, and he knows more than he lets on. A lot of times, I think that's interesting that you would think that. That the morally upright character is somehow, yeah, I'm trying to think of the word, prudish or something, but he's not. He was very understanding. He never, again, that love, never remembers wrongs, um, past wrongs, and he's never gonna hold that against Ilsa, like that about him. Um, So he also demonstrates, that beautiful kind of love that always protects, always perseveres. He's not just a boring do-gooder. And I mean, he proves it by asking Rick, again, kind of knowing that Rick loves Ilsa and asking him to save her instead of him. And like, you just save my wife, you can forget about me, but save her. Um, Again, that's self-sacrificial, and that makes me love him even more. And that makes Rick's decision all the more clear. Like, this man is worth protecting. This movie is about sacrificial duty, not passion. And that may sound unromantic when you say it like that, but I think all you have to do is watch the movie to see how romantic it really is, and read the Bible too.
We hope you enjoyed this snack-sized taste of popcorn theology. Check out the full episode using the link in the description. Subscribe on YouTube for more content. Follow and interact on social media to share with others. And remember, you are not a mindless consumer.